In January 1947, one of America's most disturbing unsolved murders shocked Los Angeles. The victim was Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old aspiring actress whose mutilated body was found in a vacant lot in Leimert Park. The killer had severed her body at the waist, drained it of blood, and posed it with surgical precision. Her face bore a grotesque smile carved from ear to ear. The crime scene was meticulously clean, with no blood found at the location, indicating she had been killed elsewhere. The case attracted massive media attention, with newspapers dubbing her the Black Dahlia after a film noir called The Blue Dahlia. Over 150 people confessed to the murder, but none checked out. Police investigated hundreds of suspects, including doctors who might have had the surgical skill to perform such precise mutilation. Some theorized the killer had medical training based on the clean dissection of the body. Letters allegedly from the killer were sent to newspapers, one promising to turn himself in, and another containing Short's belongings, but investigators could never verify their authenticity. Despite the LAPD's largest manhunt at the time, involving over 750 investigators and thousands of interviews, no arrests were ever made. Theories have ranged from a spurned lover to a deranged surgeon, and even a connection to other unsolved murders in the area. The brutality of the crime and the complete lack of physical evidence left investigators baffled. To this day, the Black Dahlia murder remains one of America's most haunting cold cases. Between 1968 and 1969, a serial killer terrorized Northern California, claiming at least 5 victims and possibly many more. The Zodiac Killer, as he called himself, taunted police and media with cryptic letters and coded messages, some of which remain unsolved to this day. His confirmed murders began on December 20th, 1968, when he shot and killed 2 teenagers in their car in Benicia. 7 months later, he struck again at Blue Rock Springs, killing one and severely wounding another. What made the Zodiac unique was his need for attention. He sent letters to newspapers, taking credit for the murders, and included complex ciphers he claimed would reveal his identity. One cipher was cracked within days, but its decoded message offered no real clues, only the killer's chilling statement that he was collecting slaves for the afterlife. In October 1969, he murdered a cab driver in San Francisco, brazenly doing so in a residential area where witnesses could see him. He even called the police afterward to report the crime. The Zodiac claimed responsibility for 37 murders in his letters, though only 7 attacks and 5 deaths have been definitively linked to him. His communications included threats to blow up school buses and detailed diagrams of bombs. Police sketches showed a stocky man with glasses, but despite numerous suspects over the decades, no one was ever charged. The case saw renewed interest in 2020 when amateur codebreakers finally solved one of his remaining ciphers, but it contained no useful information about his identity. DNA evidence from envelope seals has been extracted, but has not matched anyone in criminal databases. The Zodiac's true identity remains one of America's greatest mysteries. On November the 24th, 1971, a man using the alias D.B Cooper boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. He wore a business suit, black sunglasses, and carried a briefcase. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a note to a flight attendant claiming he had a bomb. When she read it, he opened his briefcase to reveal what appeared to be dynamite wired to a battery. Cooper demanded $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle. The airline complied with every demand. After the plane landed in Seattle, Cooper released all 36 passengers in exchange for the money and parachutes. He kept the flight crew and ordered the pilot to take off again, heading toward Mexico City at minimum speed with the landing gear down and flaps lowered. Somewhere over southwestern Washington, Cooper lowered the rear stairs of the Boeing 727 and jumped into the night wearing only a business suit, carrying the money in a canvas bag. He was never seen again. The FBI launched one of the most extensive manhunts in American history, codenamed Norjok. They searched the wilderness where Cooper likely landed but found nothing. No body, no parachute, no money. The case went cold until 1980, when a young boy found $5,800 of the ransom money partially buried along the Columbia River, about 20 miles from Cooper's estimated jump zone. The bills matched the serial numbers from the hijacking. This discovery only deepened the mystery. Had Cooper died in the jump and his body washed downriver, or had he survived and lost part of his stash? Theories about Cooper's fate vary wildly. Some believe he died on impact or from exposure in the freezing November rain. Others think he was an experienced parachutist who survived and disappeared with most of the money. Over 1,000 suspects were investigated, but none definitively matched the evidence. The FBI officially closed the case in 2016, but Cooper's identity and fate remain unknown. He's the only unidentified hijacker in American aviation history. From May 1918 to October 1919, New Orleans lived in terror of a brutal killer who became known as the Axeman. Unlike typical serial killers, the Axeman didn't follow a clear pattern in victim selection. He attacked Italian grocers and their families, breaking into homes at night, often using the victim's own axes to commit his crimes. In most cases, he removed a panel from the back door to gain entry, then attacked victims while they slept. Some survived, others didn't. At least 6 people were killed and 12 more wounded. What made the Axeman truly bizarre was a letter he allegedly sent to newspapers in March 1919. Written in a dramatic, almost theatrical style, the letter claimed the killer was a demon from hell who would spare anyone playing jazz music in their home on a specific night. The entire city responded, with dance halls packed and jazz pouring from every home. No attacks occurred that night, adding to the legend and mystery. The letter's authenticity was never confirmed, and many historians believe it was a hoax, possibly written by a newspaper reporter to sell papers. Still, the attacks were real. Survivors described a shadowy figure, sometimes tall and thin, other times heavyset. The descriptions were so inconsistent that police wondered if they were dealing with multiple attackers. Some theorized the crimes were related to Italian crime syndicates or Black Hand extortion, but no clear motive emerged. The attacks stopped as suddenly as they began in October 1919. The final victim was a grocer named Mike Pepitone, killed in his bedroom. His wife claimed to have seen the attacker flee, describing a man in dark clothing. Months later, a woman shot and killed a man in Los Angeles, claiming he was the Axeman who had murdered her husband. She was acquitted, but whether she killed the actual Axeman remains unknown. The true identity of the killer was never established, and the case remains one of America's earliest unsolved serial murder mysteries. Jimmy Hoffa was one of America's most powerful and controversial labor leaders. As president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, he commanded loyalty from millions of members and wielded enormous political influence. He also had deep ties to organized crime, using mob connections to maintain control of the Union. In 1964, Hoffa was convicted of jury tampering and fraud, serving nearly 5 years in federal prison before President Nixon commuted his sentence in 1971. On July 30, 1975, Hoffa left his suburban Detroit home to meet 2 mafia figures at the Marcus Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. He was supposedly trying to regain control of the Teamsters, which required mob approval. Hoffa called his wife around 2:30 p.m., irritated that the men were late. That was the last confirmed contact anyone had with him. He was never seen again. His car was found in the restaurant parking lot, unlocked with no signs of a struggle. Witnesses reported seeing him get into a car with other men, but descriptions varied. The FBI immediately suspected mob involvement, believing Hoffa had been killed to prevent his return to Union leadership. Numerous theories emerged about his fate. Some claimed he was murdered and his body cremated. Others said he was buried in concrete at Giant Stadium in New Jersey, though this was later disproven. Still others suggested he was crushed in a car compactor or dissolved in acid. Over the decades, investigators have dug up fields, torn apart buildings, and drained ponds searching for Hoffa's remains, but nothing has ever been found. Deathbed confessions from mobsters have pointed to various locations, but none have led to his body. In 1982, Hoffa was declared legally dead, but the circumstances of his disappearance remain unsolved. The FBI continues to receive tips, and the case remains open. Jimmy Hoffa's vanishing has become an enduring American mystery, symbolizing the dark intersection of labor, politics, and organized crime. Between 1979 and 1981, Atlanta was gripped by terror as at least 28 young African Americans, mostly children and teenagers, disappeared or were found murdered. The victims ranged in age from 7 to 28, though most were adolescent boys. Bodies were discovered in rivers, wooded areas, and abandoned buildings around the city. Causes of death varied, with some victims strangled, others suffocated, and some showing signs of having been held captive before death. The cases drew national attention and massive public pressure for answers. The FBI joined local police in one of the largest investigations in the South's history. Panic spread through Atlanta's black community as parents kept children indoors and escort services sprang up to walk kids to school. Civil rights leaders demanded action, with some suggesting the murders were racially motivated hate crimes being ignored by authorities. In 1981, police focused on Wayne Williams, a 23-year-old freelance photographer and music promoter. Williams was placed under surveillance after fiber evidence linked him to several victims. On May 22, 1981, police staking out a bridge heard a loud splash. They stopped Williams, who was driving across the bridge, but let him go. 2 days later, the body of Nathaniel Cater was pulled from the river downstream. Fibers found on Cater and other victims matched fibers from Williams' home and car. Williams was convicted in 1982 of murdering 2 adult victims and sentenced to life in prison. While he was never tried for the children's murders, police closed most of the cases, attributing them to Williams. However, significant doubts remain. Many believe Williams couldn't have committed all the murders, citing differences in methodology and victim profiles. Some victims' families maintain Williams is innocent, pointing to the fact that murders with similar patterns continued after his arrest. In 2019, Atlanta's mayor ordered evidence from the cases to be retested with modern DNA technology, but results have been inconclusive. The controversy over whether one man committed all these crimes or whether other killers remain free continues to this day.